Warning, the following video will contain content that is not appropriate for children. Viewer discretion is advised.
Alright, what's up everyone? Welcome back for another one of my Pokemon Battle Revolution rant battles. So today, I'm going to be ranting about something that is just very stupid, so... yeah, I should warn you guys ahead of time though, maybe a bit controversial, whatever. Might be, it might not be. Either way, I don't care. Nothing I say is intended to offend anyone. It's just my personal opinions. So, again, just a fair warning. So, here's the deal. I've been talking about this a lot tonight. There's a lot of negative stereotypes and myths out there about gaming and gamers in general. And one of the biggest ones that causes a lot of damage to video games and gamers is the myth that video games cause people to be violent and that video games cause violence. This is absolutely untrue. And I can prove this using basic logic, reasoning, and data analysis. Now, there's actually a lot that goes into this one, and it's actually, for once, well thought out, because most of my stuff is just, you know, I come up with it pretty much on the fly. But I actually did legitimate research for this one. So, what most people don't understand is the difference between causation versus correlation. For example, it's a little known fact that there is a positive correlation between the amount of ice cream sold and the number of violent crimes committed. When the sales of ice cream increase, also the number of violent crimes increase. Now, obviously, it would be ridiculous to say that, you know, people are eating ice cream and the ice cream is causing them to commit violent crimes. That's ridiculous. Ice cream does not cause people to commit violent crimes. The reason why there's a positive correlation between the number of people who buy ice cream, you know, the sales of ice cream, as well as the number of people who commit violent crimes is because people commit more violent crimes during the summertime. And naturally, more ice cream is sold during the summertime. So there's a huge difference between causation and correlation. Causation is what really matters. Correlation, there can be a correlation between two completely unrelated factors. Like, for example, the number of people who commit violent crimes and the sales of ice cream. Because obviously, ice cream does not cause people to commit violent crimes. I can use this same principle to prove that video games do not cause violence. Now, according to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, aka the FBI, in the year 2016, there was approximately 1.2 million violent crimes committed within the US. This statistic, also keep in mind, does not take into account repeat offenders. So, multiple people may have racked up several charges, you know? So let's take this into account here. Let's assume that 1 million of those 1.2 million people who committed a violent crime, let's assume 1 million of those people play some kind of violent video game. Now, the fact that 1 million of those 1.2 million people play a violent video game would definitely be enough to prove that there is a correlation between between violent video games and the number of violent crimes committed. You know, that would be enough to prove a correlation between those two factors. You know, violent video games, you know, the number of people who play violent video games, or, you know, just violent video games in general, versus the, you know, violent crimes committed. Definitely enough to prove a correlation between the two if 1 million out of the 1.2 million people who committed those violent crimes play some kind of violent video game. That's a correlation. But again, what matters is causation. What you have to look at is the number of people who committed violent crimes and play violent video games versus the total number of people who play violent video games. So let's assume within the US, there's at least 40 million people who play some form of violent video game, which, by the way, given that any moron with access to a laptop or a computer has access to violent video games of some kind, that is a very conservative estimate that only about 40 million people within the US play some kind of violent video game. That's a very conservative estimate. So Again, let's assume that 40 million people within the US play some kind of violent video game. So what really matters is you take the 1 million people who committed a violent crime and play some kind of violent video game and divide that by the 40 million people who play violent video games. The percentage that you get, 2.5% of all people who play violent video games commit some kind of violent crime. 2.5%. Which I don't know if you guys know about percentages. That is a very, very small percent. A very small percent. So you're telling me that if only 2.5% out of all the people who play violent video games commit a violent crime, that violent video games cause people to commit crimes? That's ridiculous if only 2.5% of those people are committing violent crimes. So yes, there very well may be a correlation between, the violent video games and the, number of violent crimes committed. There very well could be a correlation, but that doesn't matter because what you have to look at is the total number of people who play violent video games. And if the percentage is smaller than 5%, if it's only 2.5%, chances are there's some other factor that is affecting people in a way that causes them to commit violent crimes. Like, take for example, I read a statistic somewhere that out of the past 21 mass shootings in the United States, 20 of the 21 mass shooters grew up fatherless. Coincidence? No, given that is above a 90% mark, chances are that had a fucking effect. And you're trying to tell me that a 2.5% affection rate, if only 2.5% of people who play violent video games commit a violent crime, chances are violent video games are not the fucking problem here, okay? You need to look at other problems like, oh, gee, do these people have psychological issues? Did they grow up fatherless? Were their parents divorced? But no, let's just fucking blame it all on video games. Fucking really? That's why all of these fucking negative stereotypes against gaming and gamers are so stupid, because they can be easily disproven. Now, for those of you who didn't follow all those numbers and whatnot, because I admit it can be kind of confusing, take this into account. I read in an article that in California, there was legislation, someone proposed legislation to ban violent video games, and it was rejected by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals based on the fact that there was no evidence whatsoever to prove that video games had a negative psychological impact on people. So you're telling me that violent video games cause people to be violent when there is when the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals literally stated there is no solid evidence to prove that video games cause any psychological damage. Really, people? Wake the fuck up. You know what? Let's stop using gaming as a scapegoat to blame all of society's problems on, and let's start fucking solving the problems that are really plaguing this society, and let's start looking at what's actually causing the problems that plague our society, rather than using video games and gaming as a scapegoat. It's fucking ridiculous. Completely and utterly fucking ridiculous. Video games are not the fucking problem. Video games are meant for one thing: fun. That's why video games were invented in the first place, because video games are fun. But yeah, I mean, come on. You're telling me that a 2.5% is enough to prove that violent video games cause people to be violent. What a joke. People who actually think that violent video games cause violence are idiots. Complete fucking idiots. Oh yeah, it has nothing to do with the fact that these people were insane and they had access to firearms. Gee. Really? Yeah, let's just blame it all on video games. It has nothing to do with the fact that these people had psychological problems. No, it was all the video game's fault. It's a bunch of fucking stupid bullshit. That would be like saying, you know, the guy who shot John Lennon, well, oh gee, he read a book. So let's ban all books because books cause people to be violent. Really? It would be literally as stupid as that. To, you know, ban video games because, you know, they apparently cause people to be violent, even though I literally just proved that they don't. In literally, like, 2 easy steps, pretty much. Because what really matters is the difference between causation and correlation when it comes to statistical analysis. And I may have done a bad job of explaining all that. I don't know. I have to go back and watch this video, see how bad of a job I did explaining that. But literally, that's why I provided that example, too, of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals shooting down legislation, literally saying that there's no... You have no case here. We're not banning video games because there's no proof that they cause psychological damage. So, yeah. So that whole argument that video games cause violence is just ridiculous nonsense. Completely ridiculous. But yeah, you know, it'd be really stupid to ban video games for such a stupid reason, you know. It's like, oh, yeah, the guy who shot John Lennon was inspired by a book, so let's ban all books, because obviously they cause people to be violent. It would literally be as stupid as that. That's how stupid the argument against video games sounds, by the way. It literally is that stupid. So I'm sorry, but anyone who says that video games cause people to be violent, you're an ignorant moron. Go fuck yourself. This probably won't do anything, but... Holy fuck, that did more nothing than I expected. Ah, shit. Next, I forgot Steelix has such a high fucking defense. Even if I use fucking Giga Impact, it probably wouldn't kill him. Holy shit. I'm gonna have to, though. I don't really have a choice. Oh my god. That thing is a beast. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna win this. I definitely don't think so. Wow, well played, Steelix. Well played. Yeah, honestly, my voice is still kind of killing me from last rant when I was literally yelling shit into the microphone. It was pretty great, but, you know, I've always looked at these rant battles as a way for me to relieve stress, you know. And it does a good job of that. That's why I love doing them. But yeah, either way, guys, that's going to be it for me for tonight. So as always, stay cool and rock on. This is Multi-Step signing off.